This is your Anxiety Toolkit, episode number 120. Welcome to Your Anxiety Toolkit. I'm your host, Kimberly Quinlan. This podcast is fueled by three main goals. The first goal is to provide you with some extra tools to help you manage your anxiety. Second goal, to inspire you. Anxiety doesn't get to decide how you live your life. And number three, and I leave the best for last, is to provide you with one big, fat virtual hug. Because experiencing anxiety ain't easy. If that sounds good to you, let's go. Hello, and welcome back to Your Anxiety Toolkit. My name is Kimberly Quinlan. So happy to have you here with me. You guys, this is an important, exciting week. So I'm going to give you a quick announcement, and then I promise you I'm going to give you a really amazing interview. We had the most amazing guest. I cannot wait to share it with you. But first, we must get some housekeeping underway. It is Friday, and we have, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We have 5 days left for you to sign up for Exposure and Response Prevention School. If you haven't heard about ERP School, it's Exposure and Response Prevention School, but we call it ERP School. It is an online course specifically for people who are struggling with OCD, or for people who have a family member with OCD, or for clinicians who want to learn about the gold standard treatment for OCD. It is it's an over 5-hour course. It is delivered to you by me. You can watch it at your own pace. You can watch it in your PJs. You can watch it standing on your head if you want. It doesn't matter. The point here is that it is available. We have 5 more days where you can purchase it. Then we will close cart, and ERP School will not be available to purchase until February of 2020. For those of you who have purchased it and are planning to purchase it, you'll have access forever. And the cool thing is you get access to all the updates, and I am trying to update it as often as I release it. So I love adding, I love improving, I love feedback. If anyone has taken the course and they have feedback for me, bring it on. That's what I love to do with ERP School. So it is available. You can go to cbtschool.com. The links are in the bio here if you need it, or in the show notes. You can click on online courses, and it is ERP School. It is $197, and cart closes on October 1st, 2019. All right, that's the announcement. I'm going to move right on over to this week's episode with the amazing Monica Packer. Monica Packer, I found through her podcast, actually. Her podcast, her Instagram, her website is all on the same topic. It's called About Progress. And she so beautifully shares with us her experience with how to manage perfectionism. That's her whole model, is around making small steps and making progress, not perfection. And I really wanted her to come onto the show and talk to us about her experience with perfectionism, what her experience in recovery from perfectionism looked like. She talked about some tools and tips that helped her. And to be honest with you, she opened my eyes to a couple of forms of perfectionism that I hadn't really thought about that much. And it made total sense to me, of course, because I treat this often with clients. But the way in which she sort of described it and shaped it, I thought was just so insightful and so inspiring. And I'm just so grateful to Monica for coming on and showing us her wisdom. So I'm just going to move on in, because I know you don't want to listen to my voice anymore. You want to hear what she has to say, because there's so much beauty in this episode. If you are a perfectionist, I'm sending you my love. I know this pain. It's a painful place to exist. I do strongly believe in the recovery model for this, and it being about progress and not about perfection. And I just love that method and motto. So I'm sending you my love. I really, really am, because I get it. All right, let's go over to Monica. Have a wonderful day. It is a beautiful day to do the hard thing. And so I'll talk to you next week. Well, welcome. I am so excited to have here with us today Monica Packer. She is a delight, number one. But number two, the reason I have her on is she's here to talk to us about a really important topic, one that I know many of our listeners really struggle with, which is perfectionism. So welcome, Monica.
Thanks so much for having me. And I just adore you and all the hard work you do every single day. You are changing lives.
Thank you. Yeah, hopefully that's the case. That's the mission, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you too, I feel like you're speaking to a topic that I think we all have to a degree in some very small or a very large
Sure.
form. Share with us everything you know. Tell us a little bit
Well,
about you and your history in this area.
that's like, where do you want to start, right? First, I'll just say, I think you're right. Everyone is somewhere on this perfectionism spectrum, and I have been all over it. I think for the majority of, my life up till I was 21, I was this kind of perfectionist that you see in books and TVs, the ones we aspire to be, the overachiever in essence, so from middle school on, I really feel like that's when it really got really intense for me, this desire to not just be good and not just be better, but be better than anyone else, to be perfect. And I really felt like, I think I knew logically it wasn't possible, but that's not how I was navigating my life. And that's not how I was living my inner life. And it was just a constant roller coaster of intense work and pressure, and then never being satisfied with whatever I did do. Nothing was good enough. So that was the overachiever side. So what I would say is how perfectionism has looked like for me. It's looked like overachieving. It's looked like obsession. It's looked like depression and anxiety. It's looked like eating disorders. That's when I really hit my rock bottom, those last three all at once, panic. And then it also has looked like quitting. It looks like all or nothing, never starting. It looks like self-doubt. It's all of those and more. Paint a picture and you probably fit somewhere on there. But most recently, I think the past 10 years, after I had my lows with my eating disorders and I realized I either had to change or I was not on a course where I could live. And I mean both physically and mentally and emotionally, like actually living my life, yes, but also just like being around. I needed to make some big changes so that I could live in both ways. And because of that, though, I kind of went the opposite way of perfectionism. Well, at least the overachieving kind. I went to the underachieving kind. I didn't realize that was perfectionism too. And that's where I was terrified to try. I was terrified of getting back to that rock bottom again. And I knew I couldn't be that person again. It was too hard to go back there. I was fighting every single day to not be that person anymore. But because of that, I became a different version of me that was still a perfectionist, one who quit before she started, procrastinated, all or nothing thinking, no real sense of drive and ambition and goals. So, probably 4 years ago, I had my third kid and I realized I was going to be turning 30 that year. And I didn't want to live like this anymore. I didn't see who I was anymore. I wasn't in my life again. Again, I was depressed and anxious. So when I was overachieving and underachieving, it felt the same inside to me. It felt the same. And so I had to realize, I don't know, remember how I realized this exactly, but I discovered within myself that perfectionism was still a huge part of my life. It just looked differently. It didn't look like the ones we aspire to, the ones that we model, the ones that we reward and seek after, but it was still perfectionism. And so I decided to start taking those things off the back burner that I had placed there, different goals, ambitions, even just hobbies and interests. That's where I started, just hobbies and interests. Take them off the back burner and start to get messy with them and try them, not for the outcome, but for the journey of them. And as I did that and then started sharing that with others, and I also started to share my past, which I never had before. My own family didn't know what I had struggled with, my best friends. I started sharing about my eating disorders, the struggles with my faith, and like the mental health issues, the struggle with parenthood, and all of these things. And as I began to share and as I began to try, I found myself again. And I really feel like now I'm me. Like I still struggle every day. I still have big consequences for my years of perfectionism that I'm working on every day, but I feel like myself again. And it's just been a miraculous journey for me. And the way I think I would describe that is the courage to be in the messy middle, just really get messy with things. And that's what's changed my life. That was a way long. I'm not used to talking that much because I'm normally on your end of this call, your side. So that's what I would say is my nutshell, but probably not so nutshell version of my own history with perfectionism.
Right. A lot of my listeners know my story, which sounds like pretty much exactly your story.
Really?
Like almost exactly. Although I'm finding I'm still, what I've recently shared is I feel like I'm still peeling off because even though when I think I'm involved, like I'm like, yeah, I think I got this, then I get hit in the face by another layer of perfectionism that I have
Exactly.
to peel back. So
Totally.
some days I'm like, come on, I thought I did this work. And other days I know I
Yeah.
have more work to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been one of those things that has continued to shock me that it's still around, but it's just like in a different way. And I'm like, oh, it's you again, but it feels different now though. It's like, okay, well, let's work on this now. And I know how to do that. So let's do it.
Right, right. I love how open and articulate you are about it. How often I see, as a mental health professional, I often need to wrestle it out of people. Like I will
Mhm.
present to them that they're a perfectionist and they will be shocked. Was it
Yes.
something that someone shared with you, or was it something you found out on your own?
That's what's weird about it. So much of, my life 4 years ago kind of feels foggy. So I don't really remember a definable moment where I realized this was perfectionism, but I do remember just feeling that desire well up in me to not live like this anymore. And as I was working my way through it, that's when I just learned for myself that I was still a perfectionist. I do have an incredible therapist who has been so wonderful. And a lot of what she surprised me by is pointing out that my perfectionism was almost a way for me to feel better than other people. There was a lot of pride involved, which I didn't want to believe about myself, but it was true. I've been working a lot within even my own marriage. And she pointed out too that I still have a problem of not wanting to be human. So that's what I've been working on for a long time, is just like being human. And yeah, she's given me a lot of gut punchers in the best way of, oh, there it is again. Thanks for helping me see that and work through it.
Yeah, yeah, that common humanity is. It's funny you mentioned that because just a couple of days ago I recorded a podcast. So for the listeners, that's actually already coming out about talking about stripping away these ideals and actually accepting that you are just a human. That sucks.
Uh-huh. Because you want to be better than that. But at the end of the day, we're all human. Yeah, I don't remember what we were talking about, but she looked at me and she's like, "Why is Monica Packer not allowed to be human?" I was like, "Oh, okay. I guess I am allowed, which means I'm allowed to make mistakes and to not be the best at everything or even anything." So I'm working on it.
Yeah. Can I ask you, why do you think Monica Packer wasn't allowed to be human? Like, what do you think that was?
Well, I kind of alluded to this. That's what I try to entangle. I think a lot of it was insecurity and not knowing my innate value. I was hinging my worth off of my outcomes, my successes, what I could put on the exterior of me. And that's why my body became a huge part of that puzzle. So that was a huge piece to it. I think my parents are both perfectionists, although one of them pretends they aren't, which makes me laugh every time. And I say that with total love. They're like, I'm not one. I'm like, yes, you are. But I mean, this was a desire to be good for much of that. I just wanted to be good. I wanted to be a good person. I wanted to serve. I wanted to rise up. But then, yeah, there was a pride piece I never really realized until a few years ago. Like, I wanted to be better. I wanted to be above. And that's where I measured my worth. And that's how I felt loved, was not even being loved for who I was. It was being loved for this person on a pedestal that was only the exterior version of me. It was like a porcelain doll that came crashing down,
Yeah.
and cracked all to bits. But I thought the porcelain doll person on a pedestal was what love was. It was being admired. And that's not love.
No, no. And I love how you describe that, because I think that a lot of people will resonate is it could start from wanting to be good, and then
Yeah,
you achieve and everyone gives you the thumbs up, and that
sure.
feels good. And then you just keep going higher and higher
Going, going,
until your
going.
life explodes.
Yeah, that's totally it.
Right, right. If you don't mind me asking, what was the ground like at the lowest level? What was that moment like for you?
hmm That's when I knew I had an eating disorder that nobody would admire. And I know people are going to say there are no eating disorders that people admire, but yeah, there is. And that's anorexia. I mean, that's what was praised so much, right? As being terribly skinny and all of that. So that's what I had tried to aspire to for a long time, like probably, like honestly, a decade. And then I didn't have that eating disorder. I had binge eating disorder. And to me, that was the bottom of the barrel shame because that meant no control, which I don't believe now, but that in my mind meant pitiful, no self control. And recognizing that I had that problem that happened when I was on a study abroad in London. I was the first in my family to go out of the country besides doing a service mission. Some of my brothers and my dad did that, but they don't get to go and explore and see things. They're there to serve. So I was the first one to go. I'm the fifth of seven children. And it was a huge deal. It was the epicenter of art and culture and literature, all the things I loved, and performing arts too. And that's when I was obsessed with making sure I didn't gain weight while I was there. And I got smaller and smaller while I was there. But that's when my binging started. And that's when I had those moments of being so humiliated that I ate 3 granola bars in a row. It started there and it, only went up from there. But when I came home, well, in London, I remember falling asleep and waking up thinking about food. I remember going to these performances I had saved my money for and not even taking them in because I was only thinking about the ice cream people were getting through intermission and how I could talk myself out of getting it. And, that was a series of lows. That was the beginning of them. And I had way many more when I went back to college, low after low. And at my lowest, I think I really had I feel like I was going to lose my life. When I said that at the beginning, I mean it. I definitely was suicidal. And, I didn't have plans in place. I wasn't, knowing when and how I was going to do it. But it scared me how much I didn't want to live. It scared me how those thoughts would come into my head, the suicidal ideation. And I was a mentor for students, for freshman students, and I sent a lot of them to the therapy that's free there. And so I took myself there one day, which was a huge piece of courage for me, which shows how low I was. And I, did the intake form, put it over the counter, and usually they're like, okay, well, we'll let you know when we're ready to come. We'll call you back in a few days and then we'll set you up with a therapist. And I handed the intake form over the counter and they went through it really quick. And then they're like, come right in. Like, come in now, get help now. And so I feel like that was the beginning of my really long recovery. And I do have to say, I feel like, and this is where I'm strangely getting emotional, which I didn't expect to be because I've told this story so many times. For many years, I did not think I was getting better. I really didn't. And it was a hard, long haul. I remember one of the best moments my therapist provided was telling me that this wasn't going to go away. And, a lot of people would be depressed to hear that. It gave me so much relief to know that I couldn't fix this overnight. And so now it's been 13, 14 years. We're in the 13s, I think. And I can tell you, I am a different person. I struggle in many ways, and sometimes it is with my food and body and all that, but very few and far between. I know how to fight this fight, and I am different. So if there's any hope I can give to your listeners, whatever they are struggling with, you may not feel like you are changing at all. You may only feel like you're at the bottom of the roller coaster, but I promise you, if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, day after day, year after year, you will be a completely different person.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for you to share that because, again, I think there is such a stuckness
Yeah,
in that process, and it takes a while to get unstuck.
it totally does. That's the right word for it.
Yeah, I totally like, I'm so resonating with everything you're saying, and I'm so grateful they took your file and told you to come in.
Yeah, I am too. I'm glad they helped me right away, and I'm glad that I would have the courage to do it.
Yeah, I agree. And so from there, like, okay, so you've told this amazing evolutionary story of you coming to this place. Okay, talk me through like what were the steps? What did you do? Uh, what did you have to break to get unstuck? What was that like?
Yeah. Well, again, this is something that is a really foggy time for me. I don't remember a lot of college very well, but I do remember some big moments in therapy. And we had some group therapy, we had private therapy, and those are the things that I do remember some moments there. I think I had to break apart the thoughts I had about what mattered in terms of body and how that represented me. I remember one moment in a group therapy, a woman told us about when her son was dating this girl who did beauty pageants, which is awesome. Like, I have nothing against that. But one day he ran into his old childhood friend and he gave her a huge hug. And, he's just telling his mom about this on the phone. She's like, "Well, what did it feel like?" He said, "Well, it felt squishy." And he was saying that in like a way he loved. And he actually stopped dating the beauty pageant girl and started asking that other girl out and they got married. Like, not that, but that to me was like a what? Like, people can choose that. Like, they can see the beauty in it. And just like things like that, that kind of broke the glass for me.
I get you.
Thoughts and thoughts like that. Yeah. But really, it was untangling my thoughts. I felt like I had a cassette in my head constantly playing, like rapid thoughts, rapid thoughts. So one of my big moments I remember again is that just my therapist breaking down the cycle of thoughts lead to emotions, lead to behaviors. And I'm sure I'm reversing that order, but it all starts with your thoughts, right? And that has taken me years to work on too. So there were definitely some moments I'll never forget. But I think more than that, it was daring to keep trying, daring to try what they tell me to do, which was take a deep breath and go. Like, I would go to the bathroom stalls around campus and just sit there and just try to breathe instead of freaking out. You know, just little things like that to practice and try and try. I never felt natural. It didn't come easily. I didn't feel like it was effective, but then it was. So I feel like over years, that's what's helped. And in my latter end, after I became like an underachieving one, I think the biggest thing that helped me was making mistakes again,
Mm-hmm.
like trying things just for the sake of trying them and enjoying how terribly terribly I did it instead of making it mean something about me. That took another form of courage I needed at that time to own and try out and test out and just say I don't have, like, just challenging that idea of perfectionism in my head. Like, I don't have to be perfect. My friend is allowed in my house when my house isn't perfect, and I'm not going to apologize for it. I don't have to be the skinniest person in the room or the fittest person or the healthiest person. It's just continually challenging that by showing up weak and human and way happier in the end, like truly myself.
Right. I love in your podcast, even the name of your podcast, which I'll put links to and you can share at the end, but it's called
Thanks.
About Progress,
Yeah.
right? Tell us about how that name plays into what you do. I'd be curious to know.
Well, for many years, I thought about starting a blog for 8 years, and that is when there was the height of people reading blogs, but I never did because I thought nobody would read it. It won't be good enough. Like all these things, right? That's a perfectionist does, to not even start something. And I remember with my second child going hiking with my little family and me telling my husband all over the trails about what I would start a blog on. And then 3 years later is when I finally did, and nobody was reading anymore. Like, blogs weren't the thing. So that's when I realized I was turning 30. I don't want to live like this. I want to start a blog that talks about trying for trying's sake. And I like mold over all these things. I was going to do it. It's all about progress. But then that was taken on Instagram. So it just became about progress. And, it's shifted in many ways, like what we do and what I talk about and the purpose and all that. But in the end, it was the same as how it started. It's about progress, not perfection. And I was trying to challenge that every day within myself and invite other people along the way. And this has turned into a community. It's not a fan club, it's a community that we all learn from each other and we try to be in the messy middle together and teach and help each other. And it's been so life changing.
I love it. I really do. I think it's got such a great message. And so tell us, messy middle. What is that like for you? Talk to that, like my listeners, what might that be?
So, messy middle, I think if you're thinking about living what that looks like, I think it means doing away with the all or nothing thinking or challenging the all or nothing thinking by being messy, by trying something and have it not work perfectly. Here's an example. So I danced for 14 years until I turned 18. And that's when I was at the height of my quit. Like I started to do my quit perfectionism at that point. That's when I started quitting things. And the first thing I quit was dancing. And it's because I didn't get into any of the dancing programs I tried out for in college. So I didn't dance for 13 years after that. So 3 years ago, I tried again. And I just tried again last week. So this is what the messy middle is. It's going and doing the things you think about, but you talk yourself out of because you're going to be the worst in the room, or because nobody will care, or because you can't spend money on it, or because it won't become a business, or people won't care. And you do it anyway. You try anyway. And that class last week, I could barely point my toes. I threw out my back a few days later because of it. I couldn't even get my leg up in the air, and the ballet teacher was shouting at me. And I enjoyed every second of it. I was so terrible. I enjoyed it because of the years of practice I've had of getting messy. And this is one of my hurdles that I knew I had tried to do it a few years ago and I don't feel like I was strong enough. And now I'm like, I can face this on now. I can take back my joy, because what the messy middle is taking back your joy. Because I lost my joy of dancing because of perfectionism. And when I lost that joy, I also lost my ability. I couldn't dance the way I could have years earlier. It was some weird mind trip, right? And now I'm just trying to take back that joy by not being great at it.
Right.
Yeah.
I totally resonate with that. Yeah, once you take away all the rules and the levels and the limits that you place on yourself, you can access the joy. Why there's all those rules, you can't, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
impossible. It's impossible.
Yeah, because you've got to do something. And that's another thing we do in our community. We do something. We have a list of do somethings. Instead of all or nothing, do something. And I think it will take you crazy places. On that list I told you about of 30 things I was going to do before I turned 30, that was the hinging point for me. One of the things on my list was make 30 new recipes. And I counted a new thing of oatmeal, and I honestly think that list is what changed me, because it was a list of get messy, do something. So that's what I would hope your people can do from this, is doing something.
Right. So the 30 list, just because I love this idea, so it's 30 things you can do messy, or 30
Yeah.
things you can just try that you haven't tried because of perfectionism. What was that like?
Well, it wasn't even as specific as that. It's just short for do something that scares you. And I created a list of things that I had thought about doing, like, oh man, I would love to hike that mountain. Put it on the list. I really want to learn how to watercolor. Put it on the list. I want to read more. So I told myself on my list I was going to read 20 books that year. This is not a goal list, though. This is not a you have to check them off. I never completed that list. I did most of it, but not all of it, and not all of it perfectly. And I even changed things as I went along. And so I've made a list for this year too, and I challenged my community to do that too. They can find mine at aboutprogress.com/do something 2019 if they want some ideas, because you can steal them. So they're more of how can I stretch myself? How can I take my joy back? How can I try something new? And just see where it takes me with no outcome in mind. And your list can be 5 things, it can be 10 things. You decide that there are no rules with this. And that's what makes it so fun.
Right, which is funny because it's immediately, I kind of know where my brain goes. So I think one of the things on my list would have to be to not do something on the list.
Okay,
Do you know what I
really?
mean? Like,
Yeah.
because I think that sometimes we do, I know my instincts, I can work with it now, but I know my instincts are like, Come
Get
on,
it all
like,
done. Yes. Yeah,
let's
you got to
muscle
make
it.
it more fun in nature, more than like, I will earn 1,000K a day. Like it's not that. It's, if you looked at my list, you'll see more. And one of them was take regular dance classes, start the flute lessons again, bake 5 new things. I made croissants this year that turned out awesome the first time and terrible the second time. I made eclairs and I learned as I bit into an eclair that I actually hate eclairs. It was just, this is what it is. And it's creative, it's fun, it's challenging.
I love it. I love it. So, was there, I know I'm not going to take up your time for too much longer, but I'm curious about the
No, you're
process. I always
good.
want to know the process. Okay,
Okay.
was there a letting go that happened for you? Was that letting go intentional? How did you break away? I know you talked about correcting like all or nothing thinking, but was there a letting go for you?
Well, I think what I let go of was the expectations I placed on myself that I had to do well or I had to perform well. But strangely though, I think a big part of the letting go was actually amping up and trying things again.
Ah,
So it was a weird mix of those two. Like in my process of perfectionism, I had lost a side of myself that loved to grow and learn and improve. And I had to find her again and dig her out again. And the only way I did that was by letting go of expectations, but putting myself out there and putting in some more work.
yeah. No, I resonate with that so much. Last question. What were the roadblocks? Were there any, or was it, what was your recovery pretty straightforward, or were there some glitches?
No, I mean, it was not straightforward, is my answer. No, that it was not straightforward. There's always going to be roadblocks. I think the biggest thing is internal, right? For me, I think comparison is the kryptonite to perfectionism. That's what feeds it. That's what is the destructive part of it. So that is something I've had to work on over and over again is how easy it is for me to compare myself to others or vice versa. Now we have that as humans. That's built into us to know where we measure in and where we line up compared to others. That's part of our nature. But fighting it has been a hurdle for me. That has been something I have to take care of. So with that, I would say connected to it is social media can be a hurdle for me and making sure that I am following the right people there, that I'm making sure that I am surrounding my environment with things that are going to lift me up and support me. There were some years that I couldn't even read People magazine or look at any kind of celebrity thing online or blogs or anything like that. But I'm better now. My husband and I gifted each other People magazine for Valentine's Day, and we both read it every Thursday faithfully.
That's
So
progress.
I'm different now. Like I can do that kind of stuff, but it's kind of just evaluating where you are right now and what are your triggers, what are your pain points. There were different things I couldn't read. For a while, like 10 years ago, it was really popular for people to have food diaries online, and I couldn't follow a lot of them. But actually, some of them, so it's always just like knowing what's the right balance. Some of them actually taught me that I still wasn't eating enough. Some of them were actually really helpful because I was like, wait, that's what you eat in a day? Oh, I'm still thinking that I'm recovering because I'm not binging, but I'm still starving myself. So it's just knowing yourself. It doesn't mean you have to do all or nothing with your recovery too. And there's times and seasons to it. And I think that was one of the hurdles is realizing that and accepting it. For this season, I will not go to the bar or else I'm going to drink. That's, proverbial. But now there might be another season where you can sit a little bit in the gray and you're able to handle it better and be stronger. That's my People magazine. So those are off the top of my head what I think some setbacks and hurdles were. And I would just say the final one that I'm still working on is within my own marriage. I am married to a great guy. We've been married for almost 12 years. And I kind of beat around the bush before we even dated about how I was struggling with something. And that was at the peak of my eating disorders. And like a year or two in, he said, oh, my sister said, did Monica have an eating disorder? Because one day, like I wrote a blog post, when everyone had family blogs. And yeah, it was different. It was like Facebook, right? And I'd written something about dancing and how I missed it. And he was like, no, she didn't. And I was like, what? What do you think that was? What do you think I'm working on every day? And you know what I realized is I had never spelled it out for him. I'd always said, "Oh, I struggle with my body or my food," and I never was like, "Wow, I have to go to therapy all the time. Like this is a fight for my life." every day. Like I didn't invite him into the struggle with me. And in many ways, that's been a good thing too, because he can't fix me. And I didn't put my healing and my recovery on him. But I've also had to figure out that tightrope balance of and letting him see me as I am
Right.
and showing him the human side of me in many, many ways. And that's been a big thing I'm still working on is just letting him see the bad.
Right.
Okay. So that's the one I'm still picking away at right now.
Right. I think it's so interesting. I just had a conversation with a dear friend exactly on this, because when you're pushing yourself so hard, not telling somebody keeps you kind of in denial that this is not okay. And
Yeah,
her and I were saying, like, maybe we just need to set it free and tell people so that we can hold ourselves accountable. You know what I mean?
definitely. Yeah, I totally get that.
To get, because I think sometimes we do hold ourselves in some type of denial and like, no, we're fine. This is doable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I
Yeah,
really resonate with finding a balance between what you share and that being helpful.
definitely. I mean, that's the huge part of what has healed me is 4 years ago, starting a blog that nobody read when I suddenly shared about all these struggles I had had. And it took the shame away and it gave me some power that I really needed to keep growing and changing. So that's been really monumental for me.
Yeah. And I think you're changing lives. So thank you so much for the work you're doing.
Oh, this was amazing. You are such a good interviewer and you just let me talk and talk and talk. So I hope anything I said was helpful for even one person listening today.
No, I think people are going to love it, mainly because the message is, even though people mightn't have gone through specifically what you've gone through, that experience I know is the same. That
Yeah.
stuckness and that rock bottom, I think, that is so valuable. So thank you. I really so much appreciate your time. Can you tell us where we can hear more about you?
Sure. I'm just about anywhere. I'm not on, what is it? Smart chat? No, what is it?
Snapchat?
Snapchat. I'm like a grandma. I'm just about everywhere else at about progress. And that's my podcast too. I've been doing that for almost 3 years, and that's really transformed me. And I don't know, that's it. I love to connect with people on Instagram too. So make sure you say hi and talk to me in the comments and get to know our community and dive in because there are really incredible people there.
Yeah, I know. I've really loved getting to know you, even though it's via the internet.
Yes, vice versa. Isn't it great how we can do this?
Seriously. Yeah. You're like, oh, there's another person just like me. Phew, what a relief.
Yes, it does feel like a relief for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, I am too. Thank you.
Please note that this podcast or any other resources from cbtschool.com should not replace professional mental health care. If you feel you would benefit, please reach out to a provider in your area. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for supporting cbtschool.com.